All right, guys, welcome to day one of our season previews for Major League Baseball. That's if we get a season, of course. We're just going to do these anyway. It's a sports hiatus, guys, right now. We want to talk about sports, think about sports, anything we can to get involved with the sports world. We want to do it. So we're going to be doing these preview videos. Steven and I are going to be doing these baseball videos for probably the next 30 days. One team a day. We're starting with the NL East, starting with the Miami Marlins today. And then also CJ and I are going to be recording daily basketball videos for each of the NBA playoff teams. When we're done with the NBA preview videos, we'll get into the NHL preview videos for the playoff teams as well. And that'll be all three of us, me, Steven, and CJ, once we get to that. But let's welcome in Steven Cashin. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, hanging in there. Still, counting down the days till we get sports back. But like I said, this is one thing keeping me sane through this sports hiatus, and looking forward to breaking every team down and something I love to do. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And usually, obviously, guys, we would have the schedule to break down, how are they going to do based on the teams they're going to play. We don't know any of that right now. We don't even know if there's going to be a season. We're just going to project the Marlins based on their players and what we think their team could do based on the players that they have right now. So let's just start with their projected lineup. Right now, it's projected leading off and playing one of the outfield positions that hasn't been determined yet. Because remember also, Stephen, spring training did not conclude. So we don't even know what position battles have been won. These are just projected lineups. So leading off and playing one of the outfield positions, Jonathan Villar, Brian Anderson, the third baseman, projected to hit second. Corey Dickerson in the three hole. They just added him in the offseason. I like that ad. We'll get to that in a second. Jesus Aguilar will clean up and play first. Then Garrett Cooper will play an outfield position and bat fifth. Jorge Alfaro, the young catcher, will bat sixth. Then they have Isan Diaz at second base in the seven hole and the shortstop Miguel Rojas in the eight hole. So, Steven, we look at this lineup here. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? It's certainly not one of the stronger lineups, particularly not even one of the stronger ones in the NL East.
Yeah, it's not, it's typically a big lineup that catches your eye, but there are some pieces there that are intriguing if you're a Marlins fan. I mean, the one that catches my eye is Corey Dickerson. He was a former Ray, played for the Pirates, a guy who's batted 300 in six of his last seven seasons. I mean, he's a guy who can give you power, and I like him. He was in 3 years in Colorado, 3 years with the Rays, a year and a half with Pittsburgh and Philly. A guy who really can hit the ball out. He had 59 RBIs in 2019, 12 home runs, and 341 on base percentage last year. But
And that was
that's a
78 games.
yeah, exactly. That's not even a full sample size of a whole season. I mean, that's just if you're looking at in the numbers aspect, even the whole 162 games, the possibilities are endless. And then Jonathan VR, another guy that catches my eye. He played 162 games last season
Rare.
for the Orioles. You don't see that anymore. Like most guys don't play a whole season. You don't see that anymore. Guys like to take games off. I mean, that's just incredible. He went 274, 24 homers, and 73 RBIs. That's a guy who can, start your lineup, catalyze it, flip it nine through to the one side. He can give you some production there to be in the lineup. But other than that, I mean, Jesus Aguilar is another guy too. Came from the Rays, had a great season after getting picked up from the Brewers in a trade. Those are my top three. Looking at 1 through 9, but definitely not a strong, powerful lineup. But those three guys can really kind of jump some of the younger guys to get them going and show them how it's done.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the guys you mentioned, VR, Dickerson, Aguilar, these are kind of placeholders as of the moment. The Marlins have a lot of prospects in their system that they want to get up in the next few years. But as of right now, they're fine with throwing out those players like Dickerson, VR, and Aguilar. Those are guys that just leave good at bats. They get on base, and they're guys that can kind of teach the younger guys how to get it done on a daily basis at the big league level. And I think sometimes that's not mentioned enough. You look at Jonathan VR. This is also a guy who could play shortstop if Miguel Rojas underperforms again at the shortstop position. VR can also play second base, third base. He's kind of a utility guy, switch hitter. I like him a lot. I'm actually shocked that a better team didn't pick him up. I thought maybe even the Yankees could go after him, the Dodgers. Those are teams that like to play around guys a lot. Even the Rays Could have gotten a guy like Jonathan VR to kind of move around the diamond. But one guy we didn't mention so far, Brian Anderson, the third baseman for the Marlins, last year had 20 homers, 66 ribbies with a 342 on base. This is a guy who, listen, third base is a stacked position in Major League Baseball right now. And also, speaking of top players and positions, we're also going to get into top 10 players at each position, daily videos eventually, but that's probably about a month from now. We'll talk about that more as we go on. But anyway, Brian Anderson is a good young third baseman. He's not quite a top 10 third baseman, but third base is stacked. And this is a guy that hit 20 home runs last year and is young. And he's probably the only guy in this lineup, maybe him, Alfaro Diaz, that are actually young and looking to improve this season. They're kind of younger players looking to prove themselves.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Brian Anderson is a guy I watched, when I would watch the Marlins last year. He's a guy who can, hit the ball out of that ballpark, and that's not an easy park to hit it out of.
No.
And for him to have the power to do that in Marlins Park is impressive. I mean, looking at 3 years in the league now, he's batted over 260 in each of his first 3 seasons, and he's had 66 RBIs in the last 2 seasons. 2018 was his first full year playing 156 games. Last year, 126 games. But he's getting the production there. He's got 20 home runs in his last season, like you said, 11 homers in his first season. So the production's there. A guy who's shown consistent numbers. His on-base percentage is over 340. So a guy who really is slept on in the production of that lineup. And you put him in between VR and Dickerson, 1, 2, 3. You can go down to the 4 spot with Aguilar. I mean, that's a solid 1 through 4 lineup right there. And you find a couple pieces in that lineup might not be as bad as people think on paper, but Brian Anderson is a guy who's very talented at third base. Marlins really struck gold there, and if he can stay healthy and produce again this season, if there's a season, good things for them at the third base spot.
I agree with you there. And also even Garrett Cooper, 27 years old, 281, 15 homers, 50 RBIs, 344 on base. So there's some guys just kind of sitting in this lineup. Not a lot of people think about them, but they can actually do some damage. Another guy, these are two guys that might not get as much playing time as the other guys. Lewis Brinson on the bench and Matt Kemp. Kind of, I don't want to call it funny, but it's definitely interesting to see Matt Kemp in a Marlins uniform at this point in his career, considering where he's been in his career. Almost won an MVP against Ryan Braun in 2011. And then you look at Lewis Brinson, a failed outfield prospect that's now on the bench. And Steven, do you think either one of them could become a contributor, or are these guys just going to kind of log up the bench for them?
I think they're just role fillers. I mean, you look at it. I mean, last year Matt Kemp he batted 200. Really, he had 60 at bats, 12 hits, 1 homer, 5 RBIs. A guy who's going to play on an off day. So hey, throw a guy out there. Hey, VR, you're off today. Throw him out there. Give him some time. Just a guy who's a veteran. He's been around the league, knows the lay of the land, how everything's done, how to conduct yourself. But I don't really see him he's not going to be a starter for sure. The numbers aren't there. He's not young anymore. So for sure, they're definitely going to be platoon guys, if anything, just to kind of give you some depth in that 40-man roster.
Agreed. And that's kind of it for their major league offensive talent. If you look at their prospects, though, they have some guys. They have J.J. Bleday, who 38 games last year in the minor leagues. I'm not going to completely judge him based off of this. He was a top draft pick. But in the minors, he only hit 3 homers and 19 RBIs. Not very impressive. But again, I'm going to give him another season in the minors before I fully judge that. They also have Jazz Chisholm, a shortstop prospect. This is a guy that's really interesting to me because he has shown massive power at the minor league level, hitting 20-plus home runs in the last 2 years. The low average is a little bit concerning, but he's young, so I don't worry about that as much. I think, you can develop average over time, and I'm not a believer of this yet. Maybe I'll be convinced of this soon, but there's a lot of people at the major league level who don't even value the average stat anymore. Some people value the BABIP stat more, on base more. Those are maybe more important in the statistical world. But I look at Jazz Chisholm and I say 22-year-old shortstop, hit 20-plus homers in the last 2 years at the minor league level. This is a guy you could see at the major league level this year. And then they also have Jesus Sanchez, who hit 13 homers and 63 RBIs last year in the minors. He might break through as an outfielder. You have J.R. Encarnacion, who has risen in the ranks in the minor league system, also a guy that can hit for power. So if you look at the future of this Marlins team, really they only need probably 3 or 4 of these offensive prospects to pan out if they really want this thing to get going in a few years.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, they're a team. They're like the league's farm system. They trade guys every year. Like a JT Realmuto, they trade away guys that they groom to get to the top, and then they get these prospects in return. A guy like Jesus Sanchez, they got from the Tampa Bay Rays. They traded Nick Anderson and Trevor Richards, and to get Ryan Stanek and Sanchez in that package, and now you got yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, it's Jesus Sanchez. Got him from the Rays, and now he's major league ready. So they trade these guys away, get good prospects in return, and now they're guys who are on the cusp, really good potential. And a guy like Sanchez, who's I think could get called up throughout this year. They say he's on the 40 man right now, on the cusp. Could be a guy, send him down early, get some more reps, call him up midseason, and who knows where he could be at. Sixto Sanchez, another guy who's on the 40 man roster. He's got great stuff. Last year, he had a 2.53 ERA, 97 strikeouts, and 103 innings pitched.
Oof.
His opponent average is 234, which is pretty good. But
Yeah,
guy
and
who's
he's from the Real Muto trade.
yeah, he was part of that package deal from the Phillies. So I mean, you look at the guys they got in return. I mean, I give them I mean that the grade there from those two trades alone is an A itself. I mean, those two guys are major league ready. That's what you look at when you get rid of guys. You don't want guys that are low A ball players, not 2-3 years out. These guys are ready to get the call and start playing right away.
For sure. And speaking about the pitching, we haven't really touched that yet, but now we will. So Sixto Sanchez, even though he's the number one prospect in the system for the Marlins, most likely not going to start at the big league level, not just because, he might be young and they want to get him some more time, but because there's also those service time rules that say if you leave a player in the minor leagues, you get an extra year of control. For a team like Miami, they really need something like that. But if you look at their major league rotation right now, currently projected, they have Caleb Smith, former Yankee, projected as the number one starter. Then Sandy Alcantara in the 2 spot, Jose Urena, Pablo Lopez, and Jordan Yamamoto. And so you look at those guys and you say, this isn't a star-studded rotation, but Alcantara, Urena, Lopez, Yamamoto, all 25 years old or younger, they haven't really produced yet at the major league level. Maybe Alcantara is the closest to that. But if you get guys, in the 25-year-old range, all developing at the major league level at the same time, maybe 1 or 2 of them works, and you've got yourself 2/5 of a rotation.
Yeah, exactly. Like you look at the numbers, and I went through each starter, and the average ERA is right around a 4, which doesn't look great on paper, but like I said, they're young, so you give them a couple years to develop, get in the league a little bit longer, and you got a safety net with, like I said, Sanchez in the minor leagues right there, ready to get called up. So if a couple of these guys pan out, you have 2 solid starters. You have Sanchez coming back. You have 3. These pitchers aren't bad. I watched them last year. They got good stuff. Just were on a really bad ball club. I mean, hitting wasn't there for them. They had average, I think they had about 40 games last year where they lost by, 1 or 2 runs. So you look at it as a pitcher, you're getting chalked as a loss. You're not getting your run support. These guys aren't bad. I mean, they get some work this year. They get out there on the mound, get some help from the lineup 1 through 8, which I think they can this year with the additions they had in their lineup. These pitchers get helped out on the mound, get some confidence with that, and they'll get rolling. But a guy like Caleb Smith, I like him. He had a 4.52 ERA last year in 28 games started, 168 strikeouts, and his WHIP was a 1.2. So you look at that, and there's some good things there for Smith.
Yeah, I always liked him with the Yankees. He's kind of just a crafty lefty who actually he doesn't even most crafty lefties you would say they throw low 90s, but Smith can get it up there, 93, 94. If there's kind of a good comp for him, I'd say maybe Robbie Ray is a guy that he could turn into if he can get that stuff to be very crisp and get that control like Robbie Ray has. I think that's a pretty good comp there. Wouldn't you say for Smith?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's a guy too. Like he doesn't look like he would overpower you, but hey, he faced the Rays last year one time, and I liked his stuff. His delivery's smooth and calm. He's confident in what he throws. Um, so when he goes out there, I mean, he's definitely a guy who can log you a ton of innings in that rotation. And like I said, Robbie Ray's a good comparison there. I mean, his stuff's there right up with him. Uh, but I like him up there at the first spot. He's definitely a guy who can really be a horse in their rotation, and we'll see if we get this season rolling.
Yeah, and the Marlins also have Edward Cabrera, who we didn't mention, who's number 5 in their system, also a starting pitcher who's really lighting it up at the Double A level, 21 years old at Double A. So that's another starting pitcher there that, say things go wrong a little bit in the rotation, he could be up in the bigs as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at their top 10, like we talked about, and 6 of them are ready to go in AAA, and they're a call away. And I see a guy right here, Nick Nadart. He's in AAA as well. And let me pull up his stats here for you. He's got he's last in 2018, he had a 3.24 ERA. Last year with 3 teams, he had a 4.67. But the opponent batting average is a 210, whip 1.5, not what you want. But a guy who, you look at AAA guys that are ready. That's the closest you can get to being major league ready. And if you have 3 or 4 guys that you can lean on, if things go south in your starting rotation, you got guys you can lean on and potentially get these guys up and call them up and see what they're about.
Yeah, and I hate bringing up more names, but you also have Sterling Sharp, who's hit the big league level already, who's on the prospect list. And then you have some starters that they've actually shifted into the bullpen already, which you've actually seen. I think the Reds have done that a lot, where they've had 3 starters that have hit the big league level, and then they just send them to the bullpen. The Marlins have already done that with Eliza Hernandez, Robert Duggar, and Adam Conley. So if they don't work in the rotation, the Marlins are one of these organizations that say, you know what, try it out in the pen too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and then they got guys too from in the offseason. They got, well, obviously the Ryan Stanek trade from the
Yeah,
Rays. They
I
got
like
him in
that
the
one.
bullpen. He's a hard throwing right hander, can definitely overpower you in some situations. And then they got Emi Garcia
The
from the
Dodgers,
Dodgers.
right?
He spent 5 years with them. Career 3.66 ERA, 64 games last season. Definitely add some depth to that bullpen. If so, when you have young guys that have transitioned into that bullpen for the Marlins and young prospects, you have some help there. Guys who, like I said, show you the way. Being the bullpen is difficult. You gotta bear down in certain situations. You can't go out there and you don't have any pitches to waste. You have to go out there and throw your stuff right away. So definitely having older guys that have been in the league a couple of years definitely helps these guys out for
And
sure.
and not only those guys, but also Brandon Kinsler added from Chicago, who they actually have Kinsler listed as the new closer for the Marlins. So he's not a guy that's necessarily young either. He's been around the league a lot. He's pitched with the Twins, the Nats, and last year I think he was with the Cubs, and he had a 2.68 ERA last year in 57 innings. So this is a guy at 35 years old. You bring in to be your closer for 1 year. It's kind of a nice ad.
Yeah, and his ERA last year was great. He had 2.68 ERA, 3-3, 57 innings pitched. But I mean, the guy definitely who had some depth in there. He had his opponent averages 200. His whip is a 1.02. So a guy who definitely the numbers are there for him. He's been around the league a while. He's been a journeyman. Milwaukee for a good majority of his career, then Minnesota in split time with Chicago and Washington. I believe he was traded around there for a couple of years to get at the deadline. But definitely some good stuff for the Marlins here in this bullpen. And then, we'll see where they go. But definitely, like we talked about last night, 3 or 4 years away from being true contenders in the division. But if they stay on track and don't, blow up the farm system, don't trade guys that are on the cusp, this team could be legit in the next few years.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and I would say the same thing. It's just, do we trust the Marlins? And that's the big question here, because even last year under this new ownership with Derek Jeter and others, they traded away Zach Gallen to the Diamondbacks, who's a really good young starting pitcher, throws gas with nice stuff, and now he's in Arizona's rotation with Madison Bumgarner, and you're saying, Marlins, why did you trade Zach Gallen away? So to me, it's like you also have to trust the Marlins to really make the right organizational moves if you want this thing to work.
Yeah, for sure. You can't like we've seen it year in and year out. It's like self-sabotage in a way. You think like look at guys like JT Realmuto last year. This guy was he was lighting the cover off the baseball, and you trade him away. You still got a great return back for him. But you look at the history of the Marlins. You had Yelich, you traded away. Stanton, you let go. Marcelo Ozuna now, who's on the Braves, an interdivision rival now. Um, Guys year in and year out that you think, wow, these guys could be Marlins for life. We can extend them to 2 or 3 year deals, and then in a blink of an eye, they're gone. So there's really you don't know what could happen. You take it day by day, and you see where it can go. But if they really hunker down and stay true to their team, they can really build something here. They're on the right track with getting a few guys this offseason and really putting these cornerstones in for these young guys and building it from there. So I think they're in the right direction. And if they, stay true to that, good things will come for this Marlins team.
And I think that if everything does go the right way and everything works out the way that they think it will, they're also a team that can lure in some free agents. They can spend money. They've already paid Stanton 300 something $1 million, although they don't have to actually pay him that money themselves. The Yankees have to give him that money, but they have given out $300 million contracts before. So if this team develops, hey, I think a lot of free agents are going to want to play in South Beach.
Yeah, it's not a bad place to live. You can, like I said, you definitely can draw some good free agents. They can make splashes, and they've held All-Star games down there. People know where Miami is. It's a popular place to be, and not a bad place to go play baseball for half your season and spend half of your year there. Real quick too, I was at their depth chart. They did get Francisco Cervelli too. That's another addition they had
Oh, right. Yeah.
in the off season. He signed to a 1 year, $2 million deal. He played 7 years, obviously in New York. You're familiar with
Yep.
Cervelli. 4 years in Pittsburgh. Kind of struggled as of late, but about 281 in Atlanta, 193 in Pittsburgh. But a guy who's definitely been in the league and can be a good backup to Alfaro this season. So I like that addition too.
Listen,
I
you
can't.
you look at the catcher position in baseball right now, it's probably the weakest in the sport. If you can get Francisco Cervelli, if he had been healthy, probably would have been a top 10 catcher. I know he's older now, but he's put up those numbers before. That's why I look at like an Austin Romine who left the Yankees to go to the Tigers. There's a lot of catchers that just didn't get playing time that could very well be top 10 guys. That's what happened to Travis d'Arnaud last year. And,
Exactly.
that's going off on a totally different subject. But, now he's on Atlanta on a big 2 year contract after really being a failed bust even at this time last year. Because remember, he didn't go on his big run until he got to the Rays, which didn't happen until I think May of last year, Stephen.
Yeah, it all it takes is one spark for these catchers. You guys that are struggling, you look at the averages. Like you said, average is now a overlooked stat because no one really cares anymore about it. But all it takes is one spark, one little streak gets a catcher going, get a lot of playing time. That's the thing too. These catchers that are struggling, they're playing once every fourth or fifth day, so you're not getting a reps that an everyday catcher gets. Like you said, a guy like d'Arnaud gets traded to the Rays, new environment. Sometimes that's the best thing for a guy getting to a new team, new environment, new hitting coach, new philosophy. He got to the Rays, exploded, and now he's in Atlanta on a big deal. Now we'll see where it goes now with the money and the expectations now after what happened in a short time span with the Rays. But going back to Cervelli, a guy who, if he gets, quality playing time and gets that, get those reps every, second or third day, who knows where he could maybe revitalize his career in Miami and maybe we'll see a jump from him.
I would agree with you there, Stephen. And one last thing before we go on this Marlins episode here. What's the over under? What do we want to set it at? Do we go 70 games, 75 games?
My prediction is 66 and 96. So I would say, I would say 68 would be the over under if you wanted to do that.
Whew.
I just think this team they're close, but not quite there. That starting rotation is very shaky, and I just don't see that could go really sideways fast for them. And if you don't have starting pitching in the major leagues, you know how fast that can, avalanche on you, and it's just a disaster. So I think 70 wins could be generous too. We can go at 70. Let's do a flat number at 70 for him.
All right, if it's 70, I'll go under. If it's 68, I'll
Yeah,
go
that's
right.
I mean
I
that's
think they'll
right
win
around there. At
68
every
games.
projection on every website I've seen, they're at between 66 and 70. So I think if you do 70, you can go under. 68 is probably the perfect number for them this year.
All right, Steven. So that's our episode for the Marlins. Join us tomorrow. We'll be uploading our video. Which team are we going to
Phillies,
do
yep,
next, Steven?
Phillies.
Are we doing Phillies? Yeah. So you'll get the Phillies video tomorrow, and that'll come with the 7 seed in the East, who off the top of my head I can't remember. So you'll get the Phillies video and the 7 seed in the East video coming out tomorrow on Strictly Sports. You can listen to us in a bunch of different platforms now. You can listen to us on YouTube at Strictly Sports YouTube channel. You can listen to us on Anchor. You can follow our Twitter page. We'll give you all these links, by the way, at Strict Sports FAU. And you can listen to us on Spotify as well as many other platforms as well. Such a huge deal getting on Spotify. We were so stoked about that. So thank you, Steven, for joining us on this episode. And we will see you next time for the Phillies preview.